Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about my Week 13 tight end starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things tight ends, starting with the matchups for Week 13 at the position, then going into my top 12 tight end rankings. Now, before we begin today's video, let me remind all of you, if you have not yet already, click that subscribe button, click the bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content. And if you like today's video, don't forget to click the like button. Hey everybody, how's it going? Hopefully you've already checked out earlier today's running back starter sits video. If you have checked that out and you've come over here to talk about tight ends, perfect. That's exactly what we want to hear. Starting off at the top, rankings are always subject to change, but these are pretty concise rankings. I think as of right now, there are really only a few elite tight ends in the National Football League, and then we have a couple mid-ground guys and a couple guys that you probably just don't want to play at all because they're far too inconsistent. So before we begin talking about my top 12 on the week, let's talk about some matchups and exactly who has the greatest matchup going into this week. All right, obviously the Arizona Cardinals give up a lot of points to the tight end position, but what scares me with Gerald Everett is his complete absence in the last 2 weeks. Now, there's an issue with Gerald Everett. He's been hurt. He's been seeing less and less work as the weeks have progressed. In fact, Tyler Higbee's out there catching passes, which scares me. This issue has scared me to the extent to where I don't even have Gerald Everett as my top 12 tight end this week. And usually, I always say, you got to have anybody playing against the Cardinals as a top 12 because it's far too easy of a matchup. As of right now, I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid of playing Gerald Everett and getting screwed over. I understand the upside, but you'd have to take the risk on your own to, risk versus reward, figure it out. Because really, he just has been extremely underutilized, and it's very unfortunate. Tampa Bay playing against Jacksonville. Jacksonville doesn't really have a tight end, so we can move on from that. Then we have the Green Bay Packers taking on Evan Engram if he's healthy. I don't think he's going to be healthy. He's not even on today's list. So we'll see when that happens. But again, this is a Tuesday video. Usually, by Thursday, we kind of have more information, which kind of gives me more of a perspective on what I'm going to start at tight end. So again, this is early and on purpose because there are 3 Thursday games. I got to get this out. So again, bear with me, rankings subject to change. We'll talk about updated rankings on Thursday mornings, probably live stream. Moving on, Seattle playing against the Minnesota Vikings. Kyle Rudolph should be good. The Oakland Raiders give up a lot of points to opposing tight ends. Kelce should be fantastic. The Chiefs on the other side of it, Darren Waller should be decent. Then we have the Chicago Bears. TJ Hawkins is, barely even utilizing that offense. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys playing against, Devlin Knox. Not really interested in that either. We have Washington Redskins playing against the Panthers. Greg Olsen should be decent. And then we have the Steelers, who, again, David Njoku isn't back. And that's pretty much the dealio. Those are the best matchups at the tight end position. Can we take advantage of any of those? Sure, there are a couple of those that we could take advantage of, but do we want to? Do we have the right players, and are we willing to risk it? That's what we're pretty much talking about today. But regardless, let's talk about my top 12 on the week. Again, this is a shorter video, not by accident, but because these are really the top 12 guys at the position right now. Again, like I mentioned before, Evan Engram, I don't expect him to be healthy this week. He's taking his vacation. He's always injured for like 4+ games, each of his first 2 seasons of his NFL career, and he's probably going to miss this week. On the other hand, Austin Hooper, I don't know what his status is for Thursday night, but it doesn't look like he's going to play. And then we have ourselves Gerald Everett, who has looked, extremely underutilized, and in fact, has looked injured in the last couple of weeks. And, again, he wasn't even on the injury report, but he was, again, not really seeing much play. And that just kind of concerns me because we know what this team does. They don't talk about injuries. They don't even mention them to the press. They just don't play guys like Gerald Everett. If we go back to the last 2 weeks, Gerald Everett has played 25% of snaps and 31% of snaps when he was consistently an 70 to 80% guy. Earlier in the season, 71, 88, 81, 74, 70. And in the last week, we've seen an increase of Tyler Higbee snaps, 76 and 70%. And then we've seen a drastic decrease of Gerald Everett. Scares me, but we have to keep that in mind. Again, it's too sketchy. In the last 2 weeks, he's only played 31 total snaps for the offense when there's been over 109. This is kind of sketchy, but regardless, that's why I don't have those guys on today's list, just so if you were wondering. Now we've kind of established that and settled that. Let's talk about tight ends, starting off with my number 1, Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz gets to play against the Miami Dolphins. There's so many injuries with the Eagles offense, with Alshon Jeffrey, with Jordan Howard, with Nelson Aguilar, with Lane Johnson, that Zach Ertz has been the one and only reliable option on this team. In the last 3 weeks, he's seen 11, 11, and 14 targets. He's produced heavily on every single one of those weeks, averaging almost 100 yards receiving in each of those games, 103, 94, 91, with 9, 9, and 12 catches and 2 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. Miami, the Giants, Washington, Dallas, and the Giants again is going to make Zach Ertz one of the best tight ends by the end of the season. He's going to catch, he's number 4 right now, but he's going to catch Austin Hooper and probably finishes the number 2 at this place. Obviously, he didn't start off hot, but as of late has been on fire. He's going to continue to be as good as he has been. Moving on, number 2, Travis Kelce. So, Travis Kelce's not used to being number 2 on any list, right? He's always usually the number 1 tight end wherever he is. In the last couple weeks has been pretty good, scoring 3 touchdowns in the past 4 weeks. Coming off of the bye, you get to take on Oakland. Oakland is not good against tight ends, and Oakland's not good as a defense as a whole. Patrick Mahomes will be able to carve them up, and I expect Travis Kelce to have another big week here. He is my number 2 tight end on the week, only because Zach Ertz is just seeing more targets and more opportunity, and is probably more essential to that offense than Travis Kelce is at the moment for the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, moving on. We have number 3, George Kittle. I'm never making that mistake again. George Kittle was incredible on Sunday night's game. A guy that pretty much missed 2 whole weeks due to an ankle injury, came out of nowhere, got 6 passes on 6 targets for 129 and a touchdown, looked absolutely fantastic. And the statistic I saw was yards per route run, I think it was. I got to find this. Where do we have it here? Where is it? Damn it. Yeah, here it is. All right, NFL leaders in yards gained per route run. George Kittle's at 3.26, right? The next highest person is unfortunately Stephon Diggs, but he's not even close. He's in like the 2.7 range. Like George Kittle is, in terms of all receivers, at such a, it's 2.81 with Stephon Diggs. That's a massive gap. Tyreek Hill's at 2.78. Michael Thomas at 2.73. George Kittle is on another level right now. And hopefully he can continue on this level because he's got some tough matchups ahead of him. He's just got to stay healthy. He's my number 3 on the week. Moving on to Jared Cook, who has been a monster in the past month. Jared Cook has finally revitalized himself, and he has found the fountain of youth this season. Earlier in the season, it was because of the absence of Drew Brees. I 100% guarantee it. In his last 5 games, Jared Cook has scored 12.1, 11.2, 10.4, 10.3, and 18.9. He has been one of the best tight ends in the National Football League in the last, 3 weeks, certainly. But in his last 5 performances has been incredible. As of late, 10 targets, 2 targets, 8 targets. In terms of yard count, this last week, 99 yards receiving, and 1 touchdown. Absolutely beautiful. 4 touchdowns in his last 5 games. It doesn't get better than that. I think Jared Cook's only going to continue to stay consistent as a part of this offense. We're wondering where those Alvin Kamara touchdowns are going in the red zone. It's Jared Cook who's definitely benefiting. Moving on, let's talk about Hunter Henry, my number 5, coming off of a bye week. Hunter Henry is one of these elite tight ends. He's a guy that since he's come back from his knee that completely blew up, and he's been able to at least come back prematurely and been able to establish himself as one of the more important receiving threats for this team. 9 targets, 8 targets, 6, 10, 7, 9. This guy is incredible. He continues to produce on a weekly basis. He is the security blanket for Phillip Rivers outside of Austin Eckler. And as of right now, in this week's matchup, I have no doubt in my mind that he is going to be able to produce because he consistently is producing for this team no matter what, no matter the matchup. And Hunter Henry's my number 5. Moving on to number 6, we have Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph, like I've mentioned multiple times in terms of, hey, you need to pick him up. Why? Because he continues to produce 5 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. He has been really consistent. Sure, his targets are only 5 per game, but that's truly all you need, especially once you play against the Seattle Seahawks this week. If we go back, just look at what Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert did. Zach Ertz had 14 targets, and Dallas Goedert had 8 targets against his defense. They both caught the ball 19 times. As a whole, they caught the ball 19 times. On 22 targets. That's absolutely fantastic for the tight end position. I expect a guy like Kyle Rudolph and potentially Irv Smith to both be successful in this week's matchup. Kyle Rudolph obviously is the starting tight end, therefore he's getting the boost. He's my number 6 on the week. Moving on, Mark Andrews at number 7. Now, unfortunately, Mark Andrews sits at number 7, but I think it's because of the fact that I'm just a little worried about the matchup. This guy is a good tight end, but unless he scores touchdowns, he's put up some average weeks. the 2 weeks prior to this, past Monday night's game, he's been pretty good, but he scored 3 touchdowns in those 2 games. This past week, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 45 yards. Sure, was able to gash the defense when he was getting the ball, but wasn't found in the end zone. And that's a big contributing factor to whether or not we can find some success from Mark Andrews. As of right now, I anticipate all the other guys above him to have better performances this week, considering his matchup, all of that. I think Mark Andrews is still a good tight end, but my number 7 on the week. Moving on to number 8, Jack Doyle. Like I mentioned earlier this week, Jack Doyle is going to see a lot of production and is going to be a top 12 tight end going forward. If we see how many targets the tight end position has gotten from the Indianapolis Colts in the last couple of weeks, we could see that there's definitely a chance that Jack Doyle is going to get a pretty big boost of production. In the last 2 weeks, Eric Ebron had 4 targets and 5 targets with Jacoby Brissett. Now, Jack Doyle on that hand had 4 targets and 4 targets. So if you give a guy like Jack Doyle, potentially, who has scored touchdowns in the last, 3 of the last 4 weeks, there's always a potential that Jack Doyle could end up doing something. He could have a 9-target week in which he has over 60 receiving yards and a touchdown, making him valuable. And that's what I think we could potentially see in the coming weeks. He's my number 8 this week. Moving on to number 9, Ryan Griffen. Ryan Griffen has somehow made himself a top 12 tight end in fantasy as of late, and really is not really slowing down. Continues to find himself in the end zone, continues to be one of the, threats for this offense, you can call him. But as of right now, playing against Cincinnati, just far too easy of a match at Miami the following week. Ryan Griffen's a guy that I want on roster and potentially be starting if I am dealing with injuries at the tight end position. As of right now, number 9 sits at a pretty good spot right there. Moving on to number 10, Darren Waller. Darren Waller kind of concerns me because he's disappeared, truly has disappeared. Darren Waller, since that huge game in which he had those 2 touchdowns over 100 yards, really has just been a quiet 10-point, 6-point guy. 8, 6, 5, 10, 5. I don't want that. I want my 10-point tight end back. And he doesn't do it very often because he doesn't see as many targets as he did earlier in the season. There were games where he was getting 8, 7, 14, 8 targets. As of late, 2, 5, 7, and 6. Not fun, and hopefully can increase. But as of right now, he is still one of the top tight ends in the NFL. Therefore, he's my number 10 in a pretty decent matchup that should be a higher scoring shootout, hopefully, for the Raiders. Otherwise, they get blown out. Moving on to number 11, Jacob Hollister. Hollister wasn't really utilized, but here's the thing. If you watch that Seattle game, you know why. Russell Wilson did a rare mistake. Russell Wilson overthrew a wide open touchdown to Jacob Hollister in the end zone while they were in the red zone. It was blatant. It was unbelievable. And I still can't believe what I have seen. Wide open. The ball kind of just sailed. And Jacob Hollister was pretty much, the touchdown was taken away from him. For those of you who struggled because of Jacob Hollister's only 3 points, he should have had 10 because that touchdown should have counted. So remember that. Go watch the replay. It's pretty crazy. Jacob Hollister going to continue to see some usage because he's a big part of this offense. And in my opinion, he's going to be pretty good this week. He's my number 11. Moving on to Greg Olsen, my last tight end that I wanted to mention this week, playing against the Washington Redskins. Again, the Washington Redskins give up the 9th most points to opposing tight ends in fantasy. I think the usage that we've seen from Greg Olsen in the last couple weeks has been good. 10 targets, 5 targets, 7 targets. Not bad at all. A touchdown has been evading him for quite some time. In fact, he's only scored a touchdown in 1 game this year, and it was against the Cardinals. Hopefully, this is one of those weeks that he can score. If not, he's a decent 7 to 8, 9-point play in a half-point PPR setting this week, in my opinion. And I think Greg Olsen should be pretty decent. He's a good play, and that's why he sits at my number 12. All right, that's it. Those are my top 12 rankings. These are all stud tight ends. These are all guys that I have trust in this week to potentially play. Again, there are other guys that if Evan Ingram's healthy and Gerald Everett, they come out and say, yeah, he's not hurt anymore, we're going to play him. Then maybe we'll get a little bit of an understanding of where we can adjust this. But as of right now, I'm confident with these top 12 guys, and I don't really want to change it. So as of right now, this is what we've got. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you have not yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. And if you have not yet already, go check out my Patreon link down in the description for those of you looking to get all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered. Again, thank you everybody for watching. Tomorrow, wide receivers and quarterbacks, we'll talk about them, get everything established in terms of my rankings on the week. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.